Well, we left our homes up in Bristol Bay for the waters of Miami shore. With a hippo at the helm and our severance pay, we fly the pirate flag once more. Pirate radio with the ship and crew, we get wind in our sails and the sky is blue. There's a devil up our nose, so much work to do. Pirate radio. Well, the ship is a wreck, shit stains the deck as Michael hollers fellas make more. And Billy is a worry that he's got the scurvy, cause Chris ate all the limes in store. Pirate radio with the ship and crew, we get wind in our sails and the sky is blue. There's a devil up our nose, so much work to do. Pirate radio. Now Roy is a chum when he's on the rum, he's the glue when we spring a leak. And Stu is a mess, he does less and less, and Greg sounded worse each week. Pirate radio with the ship and crew, we get wind in our sails and the sky is blue. There's a devil up our nose, so much work to do. Pirate radio. Someone yelled ahoy, who the hell's cabin boy? Somebody named Tony, who knows? Once we got the skip, well, a mean jumped ship, cause he knew we would sail to gold. Pirate radio with the ship and crew, we get wind in our sails and the sky is blue. There's a devil up our nose, so much work to do for the pirate radio.
Bunch of different business stuff I wanted to get to with David Samson, and this isn't a local issue, but I'm just curious what he makes of the idea that the Colorado Rockies, as part of a grift, are getting rid of a player. They've gotten rid of a player to St. Louis, Arenado. $50 million they pay to get rid of him. And it reminded me of some of the Stanton stuff, except the Stanton stuff was a contract that was $200 million bigger than the one we're talking about with Arenado. So what happened with the Rockies here? They were going to compete a couple of years ago, but now they don't feel like competing anymore? They can't afford to compete? What is it?
Well, first of all, you use grift as though you know what that is. There's no grift. Did they get a new ballpark because they promised to keep payroll up like we did in Miami?
That was your grift.
We had a grift. I just don't know why you're saying they had a grift.
Because you're paying $50 million. You're telling your fan base, hey, we're about winning, and then 2 years later, you're like, never mind, let's just get rid of this contract
God,
give
I
$50
just
million.
realized, Dan, can you imagine a company paying somebody not to work for that company? Who would ever do that?
$50 million, David? Paying $50 million to get rid of your signature player.
You're just talking zeros. Here's how it works. When you sign Nolan Arenado, you're competing with the Los Angeles Dodgers. You've made the playoffs in 2017 and 18. You feel like you have a chance. You want to keep your hometown player, best third baseman. All of a sudden, your team stinks, and you realize that in the NL West, you can't compete because the Padres have passed you by. So you have this epiphany that not only are we not going to win the division, but we're not going to make the wild card. Therefore, there's no reason to have Arenado and pay him his $30 million a year. And he doesn't want to be here because he's a baby. So we got to trade him, and he's got a no-trade clause. So all they did is they found a team that would take him, and they paid enough money that they saved $150 million. So, yes, they're paying out $50 million for him not to play, but they will be better off in the long run without him as a miserable player for a team that has no chance to win.
Yeah, but what kind of mentality is that? You can't have that many teams having that kind of mentality. The Padres have passed us by, therefore we're going to trade away and pay someone to take our best player? That's ridiculous.
No, it's knowing where you are in the cycle of winning. Every team other than the Dodgers and Yankees, even the Red Sox go up and down, as you know if you're a Red Sox fan. Teams have windows of opportunity. The Padres were crap, and then they got better. They signed Machado, and now they're ready to win, so they bring in Blake Snell and Yu Darvish, and they're ready. Other teams in that division then are on the downside. Eventually, the Padres will not be able to have everybody signed. They're not going to be good for years and years. This is their moment. When they go back down, then one of the Rockies or Diamondbacks will replace them on the upswing.
What is the most valuable thing in this trade? The prospects they got back, $50 million, or Arenado? Seriously, what is, if you have to rank because they basically gave away their best player. They paid for the privilege of giving away one of their best players.
No, but they saved themselves. That's like saying the Marlins made a bad deal when they traded Stanton to the Yankees. The Marlins saved for the moment their franchise by getting rid of that obligation. And remember, the Marlins are paying $30 million to get rid of Stanton.
Right.
Well, how come you're not commenting on that?
I have commented on that. It's been commented on. That was part of the aforementioned grift of yours.
No, because you couldn't have commented because it just happened. So I literally don't know what you're talking about. The Marlins had to give $30 million only when Stanton opted into the last 7 years of his deal, which he just did in the last 2 months.
That was part of your deal with them, that you were going to send them cash considerations if he opted back in after that part of the deal, no?
No, I was not with the team when Stanton was traded. I had been fired already.
Okay, my bad then.
Fair point.
So when you look at what it is that has happened with Stanton and the specifics, what could you tell me about the lawsuit that you guys had to settle this week?
Well, we didn't talk about talking about that.
Oh, is that a sensitive area? Is that some sort of sensitive area?
I didn't realize you had those.
I didn't realize we had production meetings before talking to you, and I just had to pivot quickly because you boxed me in on Stanton.
Well, sometimes with settlements, they can't really talk about it.
Well, if he can't talk about it, he can't talk about it. But
I'm going to talk about it.
Yes.
Here's the deal. I was told by my lawyers I can't talk about it. And the good news is that I don't really care because I don't work for the Marlins, and I have no skin in the game any longer. Here's the deal, and it's a pretty simple deal. There was a provision when we negotiated with the county and the city back in 2009 that if Jeffrey ever sold the team, that the county and city of Miami would get a percentage of the profit. What they didn't realize is that profit, quote unquote, was a defined term. When you sign a contract, there are defined terms. Every word means something that has a capital letter. Profit was defined in a full paragraph. And what that means is just because you sold the team for $1.2 billion and bought the team for $158 million, that is wholly irrelevant to whether or not a profit with a capital P was made according to the terms of the contract. So we submitted our calculation of Jeffrey Luria's profit with a capital P to the county and the city, which showed that by selling the team for $1.2 billion, Jeffrey Luria lost $170 million.
Grift. Total grift.
Listen, you're comparing me to Annette Bening and to John Cusack, and I couldn't be more proud. That I take that as a compliment.
How did you guys finagle that move? Is it creative bookkeeping? Is it that the city wasn't paying attention that sports teams are creative when it comes to defining profit?
No, this had nothing to do with our annual profit. This simply had to do with what the definition of profit is once the team is sold, which means that while the team is sold for $1.2 billion, you take a bunch of deductions like taxes that are paid, and there's a whole list of deductions, and then you get to a new purchase price. And then you count what Jeffrey paid for the team, not as $158 million in the agreement. And by the way, this is all public, ladies and gentlemen. There is nothing grifty about this. Everybody can read the provision, the non-relocation on the intra-Google. And so the base of the team is not $158 million. It goes up every year and up every year. And therefore, the difference between what the team was bought for, quote unquote, and what the team was sold for, quote unquote, was negative $170 million. 5% of negative $170 million is a grand total of
negative
zero.
Negative something.
So we got sued by the county because they wanted money. We then entered into negotiations with them. And the way we enter negotiations, whenever you're sued, you do the following calculation. You add up what your legal fees are going to be. You add up what the expected loss would be in a lawsuit. So let's say you're being sued for $100 million, but there is a 10% chance of losing. Therefore, you are expected to lose $10 million. You with me on that math?
Yep.
A 10% chance of losing a $100 million lawsuit is valued at $10 million. You then add up the legal fees to defend yourself. If you assume those are $5 million, you are then willing to settle at $15 million. That is how you decide whether you are going to settle a lawsuit. It has nothing to do with whether you did anything wrong or right. It is simply a money equation. We calculated what we should settle for, and our answer was zero. That is what we should have settled for. Having gone through this for 2 years, we let the county and city know that our calculation was zero. Good luck. We then just decided, because Jeffrey was in a very giving mood, that he would be willing to settle at $4.2 million. That settlement has been agreed to by the city and by the county administrations. The city commission approved it. The county commission deferred the item. They have not approved it yet. and they will decide in 2 weeks whether they will approve it, and then the settlement will be done, and the county will get and city $4.2 million.
That's not a giving mood. That's you guys calculated what the attorney fees would be and decided that $4 million is less than that. Get out of here with Jeffrey Luria and giving mood.
I'm sorry, you broke up.
Giving mood? What are you talking about?
I mean, 0 to 4.2 million.
What are you talking about? That's not Jeffrey Luria being giving. That's he just decided he did simple math, and the lawyers were going to cost more than that.
I just can't tell. Was that a declarative statement or an interrogative statement?
That's a question. It's a question. It ends in a question.
Most questions have some sort of vocal inflection.
All right. What do you think, Stugotz? You want to ask it for me?
Declarative or...
Yes or no? You just didn't want to pay any more attorneys.
I'm your captain now.
What can you tell us about where the Marlins find themselves these days? Because we're a few years into this Jeter stuff, and they made the playoffs, and that was nice, and it was an aberration, and the sample size was small, but there is at least a little bit of on-field success momentum. But I can't tell that there's any off-field success momentum, and I got to think the Marlins are getting hit particularly hard by everything that's happening right now, just like all baseball teams are. So your guess would be what on what's going to happen here with the Marlins over the next couple of years, just financially?
Yeah, they're screwed. They are completely underwater, and they are desperate for money. If you have the ability, maybe you could sell your RSS feed or somehow sell some memorabilia from the show, but you got to become a Diamond Club season ticket holder. You've got to give them a couple $1 million a year and then get all your friends to do the same, and then maybe the Marlins can be okay. They are, and by the way, Billy, not just one hat. I need you to buy 1,000 hats and then 1,000 jerseys and then go to every game. Here's the problem. Derek Jeter made all these promises to the owners because he had no skin in the game at all. He put in $25 million that then got paid. That's getting paid back $5 million a year over his 5-year contract. And other people put in a lot of money to buy the team. They did not expect to be losing money. Their projections had them making money by now. And COVID hit, number one. But number two, they never got a naming rights deal. Number three, they never got a new TV deal. They have no TV deal with the season commencing. Number four, they spent all that money to get rid of the home run sculpture, to get rid of the way the Diamond Club was built, to change the stadium. They put a ton of money into it, and they got no payback because there's no season ticket holders. So it turns out that all the things that Jeter said he could do better than I could do, he's done them as badly as I did them. And the owners have had capital call upon capital call, which is what happens when you have to pay players. You have to get the money from somewhere. And they usually would get it from revenue sharing and from fans. And now revenue sharing is way lower. Fans are not allowed in games, but players are still getting paid. So they borrowed the money. So they have a lot of debt, and that's it. They have a problem. I wouldn't be surprised if they have to sell their team, guys.
I was just going to ask you, would you assume, guess, or know whether or not Sherman has to sell the team?
Well, you can never know because he could just reallocate his assets from his other part of his life, right? So at what point does he say, Uncle, like, I don't care enough that I have Derek Jeter's cell phone number. I don't care enough that I get to sit down and watch games with him and my children and grandchildren, because there's so many other owners here who are tired of putting money in. What I can speculate is that team is going to be for sale again, because they are going to realize that Jeter, A, doesn't know how to run a team, and B, it's not working in Miami.
David, what could they sell it for?
Well, I'm putting a group together to offer to buy the team for $600 million.
It's half of what it is that it was bought for. It's probably worth in the middle, right? The reason he's offering $600 million is because it's worth $900 million. And he feels like if he starts at $600 million, they start at 1.2. What do you imagine? Well, he's not going to sell it for any less. He's not going to sell it a couple of years later for anything less than 1.2, is he?
Might not have a choice.
There is zero chance that anyone will offer $1.2 billion for that team. Zero. There's zero chance that anyone should have offered $1.2 billion 3 years ago. But it turns out there was a 100% chance. But you can't account for stupidity and ego. You just can't account for it.
So you imagine what happens with Derek Jeter. You imagine that he lasts the 2 years, or he's gone at the end of the 2 years, or what?
I think Tom Brady better start house hunting.
So you think that tenure is going to end before the 2 years are up?
Well, he's going to try to stick it out the 2 years because he's getting paid. And then he gets his money back and retains the small ownership piece he has. So he's not going to walk away from that. He's not Deshaun Watson or Le'Veon Bell who's going to say, I'll sit out a year.
What is the biggest mistake they've made? Was it assuming that they could do a better television deal than you did? Going into a season without a television deal, that feels very expo-y.
It seems like the price they paid for the team was the biggest mistake they made.
Stu, that's it. I mean, let's face it. That was the problem. They were not well capitalized enough in order to cover. Like Steve Cohen paid a lot of money for the Mets, but he kept money to cover losses. The Marlins did not do that.
Now, you say when you say Jeter doesn't know how to run a team, I assume you just mean from like the business aspect of it, which is the most important part, because from all the measurements you see and can read, like the farm system is better. They made the playoffs. I know it was a weird short season, but you could make the argument that the team, like on the field, has made improvements.
Oh, listen, if those young players, if some of them turn out to be what they've all said they're going to be, then yes. I mean, he took all the credit. When he got rid of Mike Hill, he was very clear that Mike Hill, very clear. He said, Mike, you didn't do anything. I did it all with Gary Denbo. And that's why they got rid of Mike Hill. And yeah, they made the playoffs, but 2020 is an aberration in all ways. And I give them credit for, being in the expanded playoffs. I'm super happy. It's not like I root against the Marlins. I just root against Jeter. I want them to win, and I want it to be because of the players that Mike Hill got or that we got. I want Brian Anderson to be the best player on the team. But he just has not delivered on the business side, and that's what matters. He spent a lot of money. He had the owner spend a lot of money in the Dominican, which is a waste of money. He had the owner spend a lot of money to get rid of the home run sculpture, which was a waste, and to build that whole center field area. There's just been a lot of money spent that was silly. And there's going to be, mark my words, the Marlins have to go to the county and ask for money just like we did to build the stadium. They've got to go to the county and ask for money to maintain the stadium. That's coming soon.
In your negotiations with Jeter, which is the one that you feel like you got past him or them? It might just be the asking price, where you got past them something that you knew that you were proud to get past them because they didn't notice.
So you're asking me a question that is that could rise to fraud. And so let me be clear how this works. When you negotiate to sell something, you cannot misrepresent anything regarding the actual running of your business. During the due diligence process, you show them numbers, and I represent that those numbers are true and accurate numbers. What I am allowed to do is be self-deprecating to the point of night sweats. And what I was very clear with Jeter is that every reason why we have so few season ticket holders, every reason why we didn't win on the field, all of that is because of how bad I am at my job. And so I made it clear to play to his ego, which was so big it could barely fit in a negotiating room, that when he walks in to Fox in Los Angeles, he'll get a better TV deal. When he walks in to a season ticket holder event or a corporate sponsor event, he'll get a naming rights deal. I told him the most we could get was $5 million from Pepsi, let's say. You're going to get $10 million for sure, so good, you're Derek Jeter. And Derek Jeter sucked that up like it was Raisinets. He couldn't stop, because he said that's exactly what's going to happen. And he told Bruce Sherman that was going to happen. He then went into the rooms to make that happen, and none of it happened.
Guillermo, put it on the poll. Can you stop sucking up Raisinets at Le Batard?
Never heard that before, got to be honest with you.
Well, that seems to be his favorite. I don't think of it as something that you eat with that kind of enthusiasm, but that's why I put it up as a poll question. Can you tell us, can you explain to us as you see this happen, as you see some of this stuff play out, and everything that you thought was going to happen seems to be happening, and on top of that, a pandemic, the specifics of not having a TV deal? I thought that was the area where everyone thought the money could be made. I thought the TV deals are why the Dodgers are able to blow everyone out of the water. The TV deals are important to everything. Not having a TV deal. David, there are very few teams, right? At the end with the Expos, before they moved, you guys didn't have a television deal. You had only a radio deal. Was it only French radio? Like, you guys didn't have a deal there. It's very rare for a baseball team to not have a television deal.
Yes, it is rare. And when you're a team like the Marlins, where you are not getting a lot of gate revenue, you have to get two things. You have to get local broadcast revenue, and you have to get revenue sharing. And those are the two biggest sources of revenue the Marlins have. The Marlins will have a TV deal when the season starts. But I also know it's not going to be a better deal than what we told Jeter we had, and he could have had us execute during the course of the negotiation. And the reason he did not execute it is it enabled him to put in his projections a much larger number, which made the numbers and projections look better to specific investors who were giving him money to reach the $1.2 billion asking price. If there's a set TV deal, then you can only put in to your projections what the actual money you're getting for your TV deal is. When it's uncertain, you get to speculate that it's going to be much greater. And what happened was the world changed, and now it's a Bally-owned TV market. There's no competition. The Marlins cannot start their own network because the Tampa Bay Rays, the Heat, and the Panthers all have separate TV deals with Fox, or now it's Sinclair, and now it's Bally's. So the Marlins have no way to do any sort of leverage with Bally's other than maybe having Jeter stay at Bally's Hotel a lot in Vegas with Jordan, but there's no way to get a lot of money out of Bally's, and that's the problem.
Are you saying Jeter fudged the numbers?
It's not fudging.
What is it?
It's when you buy a business, you make projections of how it's going to go. Imagine like you're starting a media business, let's say, and you're trying to get investors. And what you say is, here's what we think is going to happen. We're going to have this person doing this and that person doing this, and we're going to have people paying us to do this. We're going to have sponsors and this and that. And our total revenue is going to be $100 million. Our expenses are only going to be $50 million, and we're going to make $50 million a year for all of you investors. And I read that with all the disclaimers, and I say, wow, I totally believe in you, Derek Jeter. That's exactly what's going to happen. And then all of a sudden, you don't get the $100 million in revenue. All of a sudden, you don't get the talent at only $50 million. It costs you $75 million, and you don't make the money you thought you'd make. That's not fudging. That's called a projection. I am projecting what I think will happen, and when it doesn't happen, you just get fired. You don't get charged with the crime.
After the selling price and after the TV deal, I'm assuming those are 1-2. What was the number presented to investors that was the most off?
Season ticket holders in attendance. They assumed that the reason why people weren't going to games was because of me and Jeffrey, and that the minute Jeffrey and I were gone, that everyone would again embrace going to Marlins games. And it simply has not happened at the average ticket price that they had projected. So what they assume is attendance goes up, and those people who go to games will pay a higher price because the team on the field will be better, and there'll be no more Samson.
Baseball is pretty much dead here by that description as a business, unless you get hot and do some winning thing with a lot of players, and then Miami will embrace that. But your failed experiment and you getting out of the game sort of illustrates what it is that's happening here, right? The market is dead. How does the market get rehabbed?
Do you know that Larry Lucchino in 2000, do you remember that name? He used to be the president of the Red Sox. He was hired by baseball to come to Miami before John Henry sold the Marlins to Jeffrey, and to give Rob Manfred and Bud Selig an explanation as to whether baseball could work in Miami and whether a stadium could get done. His conclusion is no owner will be able to come in and get a stadium because the political climate is so bad. And even if they do get a stadium, it is very unlikely they will ever be able to be anything other than revenue sharing recipients. And that was way back then.
Billy, you can't. You have been around a long time as David Samson does some of his David Samsoning, and much of it can be accused, because he's a former Marlin employee, as having an axe to grind, even though I believe he tells you an unvarnished, sort of not gift-wrapped truth when he's talking about this stuff. What do you make of what Samson's saying right there, Billy, as a Marlins fan?
Well, no, I was wondering if David thought, because when you were here, you'd hear it. People would say, hey, you know what? I'm not going to go to games until Jeffrey's gone. As soon as he's gone, I'm going to go to games. So I wonder how much of it was just people talking shit, which a lot of it was, and how much of it was, you know what? They did the same thing that we've seen here done a number of times, where they get rid of all of the star players. Like, had they stuck out with that team for a little bit and lost money, because obviously they would have lost money if they would have re-signed those players, do you think that would have impacted attendance in any way, or do you think it was kind of like a no-win situation for them?
I actually had a conversation with them about this during the negotiation. I knew that given the purchase price, and this makes me not happy, and you will be angry, I knew that they were going to be trading Stanton and Yelich and Ozuna and Realmuto, because I knew from their projections what was going to be required with payroll, and I understood that the only way to get payroll down would be to trade those players. However, what Jeter had said is, listen, you had all these great players. You guys never won 81 games. So the fans aren't going to be unhappy because those players who we had, you weren't winning with. So we're going to get rid of the players, get rid of the money, and then start over. It's going to take a few years, but I'm Derek Jeter. People will believe in the process, which is why you know what his talking points have been for these past 3 years. We had a lot of work to do when we got here. We had to fix a very broken organization, and we've got to show patience, and you know I'm not a patient guy. Have you heard Jeter say that, Billy?
Yeah.
Okay, we're now in year 4.
So do you think that was just not understanding the market or the history with the fan base and thinking, hey, you know what? I'm Jeter. They'll forgive this if we turn around and we win?
I'm Jeter. I always win is what it sounds like. I always figure out how to win. I'm Jeter.
I'm Jeter. I'm a Hall of Fame shortstop. Therefore, I know exactly how to run the game.
David, I know there's ego involved because you're Derek Jeter. Why wouldn't you have that ego? You're David Samson. Why wouldn't you have that ego? But it sounds like the people you sold the team to are dumb. That's what it sounds like to me.
I would never call someone dumb. I would say desperate is a better word than dumb. Remember, Derek Jeter had retired. He was looking for something to do. He wanted to stay in the game. Having the opportunity to own was something that was in his dreams, and he got matched up with Bruce Sherman, which was a dream matchup because Bruce Sherman let Derek Jeter do everything, and that was Bruce Sherman's big mistake. Letting Derek Jeter negotiate.
The 55th big game is this weekend. 55. A game this big deserves a big prize, not just some trophy. To finish off the football season, DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook app, is giving all players a no-brainer of an offer. To celebrate football's finale, DraftKings Sportsbook is doubling your money if a touchdown is scored in the big game. That's right. All it takes is for one touchdown to be scored Sunday night, and boom, your money is doubled. Sounds like a no-brainer. As if this game wasn't enough reason to party, with double the cash, you'll be celebrating until next season. Don't forget about DraftKings Big Game Prediction Challenge with up to $55 million in total prizes up for grabs and instant prizes for everyone who enters the contest. DraftKings has paid out over $7 billion to its players since 2012, so they know a thing or two about big paydays. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code Dan to get a shot at doubling your money if a touchdown is scored in Sunday's game. That's promo code Dan to get a shot at doubling your money during Sunday night's season finale only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older, New Jersey, Indiana, or Colorado only. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/prediction-challenge-DFS for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or in Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT, or in Colorado, 1-800-522-4700.
I want to talk to you about some business stuff, the high-end stuff. Bruce Sherman, does he get pounded by what the last 2 weeks have been with any of the hedge fund stuff? I don't know the details about where his money comes from or what kind of peril or how liquid he is or isn't.
The Marlins have increased their debt. There's no doubt because all teams have gotten more debt capacity. Bruce Sherman is invested in the market, and there are some people who have done very well in the market and some people who have not. I don't know his portfolio, but if you're asking whether or not he can afford to keep owning the team, the answer is yes. If you're asking whether he's willing to keep funding the team, that is a separate question. And by the way, do you ever get on Sherman for not being around? Because you used to get on Jeffrey, who wouldn't be around and talk to the media because he didn't like the media and I was the mouthpiece. Do you get on Sherman? Where's he been for 4 years? And that's not a personal axe to grind. I'm just curious if you're consistent.
For 3 years, I've been yelling that we need to smoke him out. I do it on the microphone, but that's the length I go to, is demanding that we smoke him out. And then I smoke the room without using smoke. I find out that I have more roar than reach, and he doesn't get smoked out. I smoked out Manfred, and I got cocky and thought I'd be able to smoke out Sherman after that.
It's weird, the smoked out term that you use. Also, there's a pandemic going on. I mean, no one's around, David.
To David's point, Dan was calling Sherman's office demanding he sound off on something before he even played a game as owner.
Thank you,
Yelling
Mike.
at the secretary.
Thank you. I was yelling at a secretary on air, Dave. That's as far as my reach carried us. But he didn't come out. We were like demanding that he come out, and he's like, nah, I'm not coming out. And I'm not even going to tell you I'm not coming out. I'm just going to stay not smoked out.
Do the new Marlins PR guy who replaced PJ, I think his name is John or Jason or something, does he give you guys players to appear on your show?
This has been a source of some contention here. No, players have dried up for us. We tried to get Mattingly and some playoff players during the playoffs, and that dried up for us. I think you're the reason for that, though. If I had to take a guess on why it is that's happening is because look at how we've spent the last 26 minutes. Like, think
why would they?
Like, Stugotz of all people just said, "Man, you made Derek C. Jeter sound dumb." Stugotz of all people. Like, I wonder why. And you're like, no, not dumb, just desperate. My guess is that's the reason.
Maybe. Or maybe you're just too smart for them.
Let's move on to some other subjects here because I want to get into this ABC News and ESPN report. Clinicians fearing that the NFL's concussion settlement program protocols discriminate against black players. It's a long story. It's an expansive story, well reported. I'll get to the details on that in a second. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on everything that happened with GameStop and AMC and hedge fund managers and Steve Cohen, the Mets owner, as well. So one part I want to talk to you about the business stuff, but I want you to also mention, or I want you to also get into what happened with the Mets owner.
So Steve Cohen, for a living, runs a hedge fund. He used to run other people's money, but then he got accused of sexual misconduct and insider trading, and the SEC investigated him. And what he did, in addition to paying a huge fine, he said, okay, from now on, I'm not going to run other people's money. I'm just going to run my own money. So he started a new company that just invests his own money. One of his investments was in another guy who invests a bunch of money. That guy lost a lot of money in the GameStop situation because he had a position that didn't win. And what Steve Cohen said is, I have to help him because I'm trying to protect my initial investment by investing more money. It's the equivalent of you owning a house, and when there's a roof leak, you say, I better invest money in a new roof or I'm going to lose my entire house and its contents. Or I better invest in brakes on my car because I could lose my life and get into a crash. So all Steve Cohen did was invest extra money to protect an initial investment in its simplest terms. It has zero impact on his ability to sign players. It has zero impact on his ability to raise the payroll or choose not to raise the payroll. It is not the same as the Wilpons losing a ton of money in the Bernie Madoff Ponzi scheme. There's no Ponzi scheme here. This is just Steve Cohen needing to cover a bad investment by throwing good money after what he hopes will be good again. In terms of what you guys are doing, I have major issues with it for the simple reason that I believe you are all abusing your platform. And it is all fun and games when you guys do what you do. And I love it. I get the show. But it's one thing to have fun and games at my expense or at your expense or at Stu's intelligence. That's one thing. When you are doling out investment advice, even as a joke, that's no longer a joke or about getting the show. People are actually spending their money investing in this crap, and GameStop is crap.
Wait a minute,
Period.
David, if you follow Mike Ryan's stock market advice after he wanders
That's on
over,
you, man.
If he wanders over to the table looking like or sounding like Ellis from Die Hard, and
if you consider it advice when I'm just screaming diamond hands, then that is totally on you.
David, I will not allow you to blame.
with
I will
this.
not allow you to blame Mike Ryan for giving in character as a spoof financial advice.
Hold on. Blaming Mike Ryan is not what I've done. And I want to be clear. I am telling you that you don't realize that people view the joking about investments differently than the joking about the other stuff that you guys joke about. And the fact is, people who are involved day trading or in trying to touch themselves in the market, they're all going to lose. Every single one of them. And what they're doing now is saying, it's okay, I'm doing it because I want to bring down the man. I'm doing it to show the inequities that exist on Wall Street and all of that. Give me a break. You're doing it to make money. Maybe not you guys, but other people are. And it's just not going to work.
Okay, turn your attention to the internet, not the show in which Billy and Stugotz keep telling me to sell. By the way, GameStop's up this morning, baby. Diamond hands.
It's ridiculous.
I told him, David, he's never going to win, but he doesn't listen to me.
This is the other thing that we gave you in terms of advice. It's not only that Mike Ryan is in character wearing a bad sports coat and just reeking of Wall Street cocaine and cologne. It's on top of that, we told you, don't be an idiot here and fight the hedge fund guys with GameStop.
We had a reporter on from Bloomberg that very day telling me what an idiot I was. And you know what I said? I've been in this since Monday. Don't tell me what to do.
AMC back in the 8s, by the way.
Hell yeah.
The fact that you guys are following these stocks makes me laugh because that is sort of insulting to people who do this for a living, who we need. it's the equivalent. And I love having and being a guest on other podcasts, and as part of Nothing Personal, that's what I try to do, is interact with people as much as possible. I want people to grow into podcasters and learn the trade better. That's totally different than me using my Wall Street hat when I was on Wall Street at Morgan Stanley and trying to somehow use that as a way to get amateurs to invest. That is just not, it's a different world. People feel differently about their own money than they do about their own humor.
Jeff Bezos steps down as CEO. Is that just something that can be explained, or does that have to do with, some of the stories you're hearing about Amazon for years taking the tips of its drivers and a union being formed in its warehouses? Or is it just a regular thing? Rich guy steps down.
Yeah, it's regular. Here's what you find is that running a company, when you start it out of a garage, let's say, that's fun. And then you build it, and then you build it, and then you do $1 billion every 30 hours instead of every quarter. That's fun. But all of a sudden you realize you're running a huge company, and it's overwhelming to both be the richest man in the world and to actually run the everyday operations of a company. So he's just being kicked upstairs. He's still going to be involved in the strategy of Amazon, but he just wants someone else to be the one to deal with the investors' calls, to deal with Wall Street, to deal with the unions, to deal with all the crap. And he's earned that right. So this was part of the normal succession plan.
It's an enormous job, correct? Is there a way to articulate to people what Jeff Bezos' life looked like absent delegation?
So even when you delegate, when you start a company on your own, it's your own baby, right? And you can delegate all you want, but even when you're away, you're still thinking about it. And Amazon is not just a company anymore. He's responsible for the world's exchange, right? I mean, think about what Amazon has become, and it's just time for someone else to take over. And I don't blame him. He's going to turn into Bill Gates to me, where he'll be involved sort of on the edges of Amazon, but he'll get much more involved on the charity side. My guess is you're going to see a foundation like the Gates Foundation much more active, and I don't blame him for that.
So, Stugotz, this story, David Samson, before we get to the movie that he's going to review, clinicians fear NFL's concussion settlement program protocols discriminate against black players. This is ABC News. It's part of something that ESPN is participating in. And I'll just read to you 4 paragraphs. At the crux of the controversy, the NFL's concussion settlement program manual recommends the use of a full demographic correction in which a player's cognitive test scores are compared to average scores or norms for similar demographic groups and then adjusted to account for expected differences in age, gender, education, and race. The practice, widely known as race norming, is in use across several different medical fields as a supposed safeguard against misdiagnosis. But because the norms assume that the average black player starts at a lower level of cognitive functioning than the average white player at the outset of their careers, the former players say, these are Najeh Davenport is among the former players, black players need to show larger cognitive declines than white players to qualify for compensation on this settlement. It's the $800 million concussion settlement. What the NFL is doing to us right now when they use a different scale for African Americans versus any other race, Davenport said, that's literally the definition of systemic racism. In response to questions from ABC News, an NFL spokesperson issued a statement saying that the concussion settlement, which has paid out more than $800 million to retirees and their families to date, was agreed to by all parties. What are your thoughts there?
Are you asking me or someone else?
I think he was asking you.
Well, did you think I was asking Stugotz?
Well, here, listen, this is a landmine question, right? And we were talking a little bit about this, and I was thinking about this when I was reading the article. The way these settlements work is they don't just come out of thin air, and the distributions of class action settlements are done very, very carefully, and they are agreed upon before anybody gets a dollar, which means there are protocols that are agreed upon. Who's got the worst concussion? Who has the worst disability, because they're going to get the most money, in theory, the most percentage money of the settlement. And what's being claimed now is that black players have to claim that they went from a point to another point where they have a worse cognitive decline than white people have to show. And they're saying that that's not fair to black players. What they're not saying, and this is not me commenting, and I'm not going to even say, you don't have to say you're not racist. Either you're not racist or you are racist. The reality is that players were aware of the settlement terms, lawyers and courts. Everybody agreed to the settlement terms. Everyone agreed in advance how players were going to be evaluated. It's not Roger Goodell looking at a player's color and saying, you get less money. It is doctors. It is judges. It is lawyers. And there is full and open and transparent communication and measurement. Whether or not racial norms are systemically racist, I can't comment on. I was talking to Roy before we started this show.
You can comment. You can comment on that. I mean, it seems pretty clear that there are all sorts of biases, testing and beyond, that permeate our entire everything from our system of justice to our system of education.
Yes, all of that is true, but that is not handled by the courts as part of a settlement of a legal action. The equivalent is, as I said to Roy, in my mind, I am 5'5". Let's say he is 6'1". If we have to prove that we are getting money in a settlement because our knees hurt from playing on turf, and I have to jump as high as he jumps to touch something that is 7 feet in the air, and because I can't touch it, I get to say my knees are worse than his knees, he's got a complaint. Because I, by definition, by being shorter, can't reach a level that he can reach. He shouldn't get less money because of his knees, because he can reach something that I can't. That is the genesis of what people are saying here, that we are not using height, we're not using weight, we are simply using color. The reason why color is used...
And intelligence, not just color, intelligence as well, and some of the things that happen when you start testing intelligence on different races, and some of your standardized testing is done by white people in a world built for and by white people.
Right. I believe what you mean is cognitive ability, not intelligence. I don't think, and I don't know, I don't believe that money from the concussion settlement is going out according to your IQ or your ability to process information. I believe it's based on cognitive ability and the results of concussions. And that doesn't, by definition, make you less intelligent. It makes you less able to process information and to actually, with the concussion, you're like in a brain fog. Basically, you can't do anything. You can't work. You can't focus. You have headaches that are often very debilitating. And all the courts are saying is that one of the things we look at is where people's general cognitive decline has been. And if they're saying that there is a level they start from that changes from person to person, and race is one of the criteria they use to figure out your baseline cognitive ability, I am not in a position to comment on whether that should be one of the staples used.
It's interesting that the place that you went there was just whether or not you can win in a court of law, as opposed to the argument being posed by Najeh Davenport and Kevin Henry, not just whether they can win the lawsuit, but the merits of the lawsuit beyond the law, just the idea of what it is that they're arguing. You just went straight to can they win, it felt like, versus how about sort of addressing what it is they're saying?
I think there's no question that there is systemic racism and racial inequality. And I've been talking about it, nothing personal, for a very long time. But I'm not going to use the concussion settlement as a reason why. If you want to talk about all of the systemic racism, you don't have to look very far than equal pay. You don't have to look very far than opportunity in the job market. That is where you can go. But it would be like a black player saying that he doesn't have a chance to be in the NFL because he's black, no matter what his skill level is. And I don't believe that owners pay players or are racist and manifest their racism in that way. They do it based on ability on the field. And by the way, owners don't take care of players post-retirement having nothing to do with color. They just didn't want to have to take care of them, period, because they knew that these players were getting hurt. They didn't care. They knew they were doping them up during games to get them back on the field, and they didn't care because all they cared about was them playing. And once they were gone from the team through release or retirement, that's the end of it. What's happening now is a reckoning for what owners have done and what the league has done, and I don't view it as a racial issue.
To be fair to the NFL is saying, and making sure everyone knows, these are independent clinicians, third-party administrators in the process. Quoted, an NFL spokesperson is saying the NFL parties play no role in the independent clinicians' examinations, and any resulting diagnoses are reviewed by a neutral court-appointed claims administrator. Challenges to diagnoses are reviewed by a neutral court-appointed special masters, and ultimately the court itself. But you should know if...
That's the whole thing, Dan, right? That's the whole issue. You can't accuse the NFL of systemic racism because of this. You can accuse them because of other things, but not because of this, because they have nothing to do with it. They put money into an account. That is all they do. After that, they literally have nothing to do with it.
What is the movie you're reviewing as we get you out of here today?
Mike told me to watch Disclosure, and it's actually a decent segue. Disclosure, not with Michael Douglas. Disclosure is a documentary that taught me about the trans world I had no idea about. And I had no idea that how offensive things were in the media. And they showed Bosom Buddies with Tom Hanks. They showed Tootsie with Dustin Hoffman. Staples of my childhood. Staples. And I watched them as humor, and I still do. And I was not in a position to understand why anyone would watch that and say, wow, they're making fun of how I feel. Because I didn't feel that way. I was a boy who was a boy. And I was comfortable being a boy and didn't feel like I was a girl. So I couldn't appreciate that, much like I have no idea what it is to not be a person of privilege. I can't pretend I do. Those are the shoes that I have. So this documentary taught me more than a documentary has in a very long time. And the empathy I felt was not that all of a sudden I had a different view toward trans people. I had a different sensitivity toward how they look at things that are going on in the world of media and in the world of movies. And I'll tell you, it is, you look back at some movies and you can see the racism, obviously. And I was always aware of that. And I was always told that I could laugh at that. I could laugh at Gene Wilder in blackface in the movie Silver Streak. And I could laugh at C. Thomas Howell in blackface in the movie Soul Man. And now I look back with embarrassment and shame because it just didn't occur to me that laughing was hurtful. And now I watch Disclosure and learn the same thing about the trans community and the courage they have, and Laverne Cox and et cetera, et cetera. It was a fabulous, fabulous documentary that I think everyone should watch.
One of the best things a documentary can do for me, if I can get just this out of a documentary, it will have been a positive experience for me, even if the rest of it wasn't any good. The idea of presenting you with something that you simply had never considered. Something, just a viewpoint that had never struck you in any way to notice. And this is what you find in all the conversations in America these days about race, about sexuality, about the trans community, about everything. You will find, I remember Amici talking about privilege and talking about empathy and talking about compassion, saying he had never considered the idea that he couldn't just be someone who jogged at night without worrying about anything. And yet a woman walks to her car at night and she's looking over her shoulder. And it's just not something I've ever done in my life. Not one time. When he was talking about privilege, it's the nature of privilege to not have considered any of these viewpoints before. So you're watching this documentary and you're being introduced to a world that you have given very little thought to. Yeah, and you taught me this actually about blind spots. I used to think I had no blind spots professionally or personally, and it turns out I had so many blind spots personally that I just, they're by definition, you're not aware of them. And through therapy and through sort of self-awareness and actually being willing to learn something about yourself, I learned all these blind spots I have, and they don't go away very quickly. And that's one of the issues with racism, that sometimes systemic racism or the way you feel about a community is not necessarily because you feel that level of hatred or anger or anxiety or hate, but you just don't think about it. You don't think about what it feels like to be black and watch someone in blackface or Robert Downey Jr. in Tropic Thunder, and you don't realize how hurtful it is when you're laughing at that. And that's a blind spot. And now I can see better, and I never knew anything about the trans community. Literally never, except Tom Hanks dressed like a woman, right? That's all. See you later, Samson. We'll talk to you next week.
This is the Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugotz podcast.
So let's get someone more informed than we are to talk about this story. ABC News, ESPN, not exactly the way that we thought we'd be covering Super Bowl week. No guests this week. We haven't done anything Radio Row related. The pandemic is going on. It doesn't feel at all like football. And Stugotz and I just were talking about a retired football player and how sad and hard it is to retire from football. So we segue seamlessly from that particular darkness to this darkness, which is clinicians are seeing a racial inequity, an inequality in the NFL concussion payouts as part of this $800 million settlement. So Dr. Daniel Kantor, he's a neurologist. He's a specialist in Coconut Creek, Florida. He's joining us now. Daniel, you are, explain to me what your link is to Najeh Davenport. Do you have a link to Kevin Henry?
No.
So what is the link to Najeh Davenport, and how is it that you're involved with this particular headline?
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Daniel Kantor. I'm the president emeritus of the Florida Society of Neurology. I am the chair of the subcommittee on concussion for Florida High School Athletic Association, and I just finished my term as vice chair of the American Academy of Neurology Sports Neurology section. So one of the things I specialize in is brain injury and concussion. And there's a settlement that was in the news a lot many years ago, which is between the NFL and players who suffered concussions while playing football in the league. And so as part of that, I was for a while, not anymore, but I was what they call a MAF. So I think it actually stands for Monetary Award Fund, Qualified Physician, which means that when somebody is in the NFL and they're retired, they can go either to a MAF doctor who's supposed to be more independent, or they go to a doctor who's much less independent, who's basically hired by the settlement to figure out whether they deserve payout or not payout.
And so as it relates specifically to your involvement with this, Najeh Davenport's decision to do this, Najeh Davenport is claiming to ABC News that there is racial bias in how it is that these payments are given out. Can you speak to that? And what kind of arguments can you make on behalf of that?
Racism is defined as being prejudice based on the color of one's skin. The agreement made by the NFL is racist. It's simple as that. Basically what it says is that we didn't test people 30 years ago before they started playing. So we're testing them after they're retired from playing and they are having thinking problems. So then you have to say, well, how do you know if somebody who had a good IQ or not a good IQ? So the way you normally do that is you look at, their socioeconomic background, where they went to school, how well they did in school, and you play all these things together. In the case of the NFL settlement, what they're saying is the deciding factor is whether you're black or whether you're white. And if you're black, they're saying you're scoring lower, not because of the concussions, you're scoring lower because you started out scoring lower. That is the definition of racism.
So what do you say when someone says, well, a settlement was agreed to by all parties on this? It was already agreed to. It was $800 million. Why should this be outside of the auspices of that agreement?
Firstly, I'm not sure that the settlement was agreed to in a manner that was fair to the people that were agreeing to. What I mean by that is when you normally go for a lawsuit, you have a lawyer and you're of sound mind, you can make a decision. We're taking people who were saying have thinking problems, and their only representation was lawyers. They didn't have another guardian to make decisions of whether this made sense or not. There's no way that an NFL player should be expected to go through the thousands of pages of the settlement and say, oh, wait, that doesn't make sense. You're using a norm from the 1980s from San Francisco, from black people there, and you're trying to apply that to me here nowadays in the year 2020, 2021. That's not fair to expect that of people. So the agreement was set up in a way that was unfair to people of color.
And the agreement is agreed to, though, correct? Like legally, you're not a lawyer, but
I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer.
But legally, whether I just don't understand how can you end up winning something like this if that agreement is in place legally.
So how they're going to win this, I'm not sure. And that's a question for the lawyers. What they could say, I guess, is to say that the agreement never met the muster, never really passed the test of not being a racist agreement, and it was unfair from the beginning. And so that part of the agreement should be played back. I mean, that's not the only aspect of this agreement that doesn't make sense to me as a doctor. What I specialize in is the nervous system. specialize in the brain, the spinal cord, the peripheral nerves. We don't have a diagnosis called neurocognitive impairment level 1.5 or level 2. Yet we are expected to make those diagnoses to help the players meet the criteria. So the criteria are made of these legalese criteria that don't have anything to do with what we do in regular practice.
Can you explain to the audience just how difficult it is sometimes to collect on these settlements? Do you have firsthand working knowledge of that?
I have firsthand knowledge of that. I'll tell you, when I started doing this, at first I thought, probably like most of your listeners, I thought, well, these are NFL players. They're wealthy. What are they complaining about? They knew there were problems with hitting their heads. Well, that's firstly not true. So until about the 80s, 90s is when you started to see people start to make more money. And then you start seeing crazy payments that people were getting, right? So NFL players, we know, make a lot more money than the rest of us. But that wasn't the case in the 70s, in the 80s, even I think maybe in the early 90s. I had one player who told me that his sister was a nurse. She was making more money than he was playing football in the NFL. And so there's first that idea of bias, right? So we come to this, I think all of us in the public, we just assume, NFL players, they're well off. It's not a problem. We also think, well, it's obvious nowadays that hitting your head is a bad idea. We say that now, but that wasn't obvious when these players were out there. It wasn't that repeated hitting your head and being forced to go back into play was a bad idea. And so now that we know that, it's a whole different ballpark. So it should be an easier process. A process where you go with your claim, there's a board, they sign the board, and boom, you get payouts. That is not the case. It has not been easy for these players. There are very few players relative to the amount of players who played in the NFL who've actually had payouts. And as physicians, we're being told, we get back rejections about our the people that we've seen saying, well, they didn't meet this criteria or that criteria. And it just seems like every time they're adding on just another barrier to people actually getting the care they deserve.
What are the medical specifics we need to know about Najeh Davenport?
I think the medical specifics are that Najeh played in the NFL. Najeh has cognitive problems, so thinking problems, because of repeated head injury. And that's not being recognized by the NFL because they're saying, no, he's scoring low, not because they got hit in the head. He's scoring low because he's black. That's what people need to know.
Hasn't he also, though, when I think of Najeh Davenport, somebody I have known since high school here in Miami, I remember there were reports about him testing poorly. And this happened to a lot of Miami guys where they went to UM and got an education and got smarter at the University of Miami and became professionals and grew into adults, but didn't necessarily test well. And I remember Najeh having around him some sort of, scouting combine testing shame. I don't think I have that wrong. But so what would you say to the person who's saying, well, no, that's not based on his being black and it's not being based on a lower measure of cognitive ability. It's being based on the fact that Najeh Davenport has been somebody that has tested poorly for a long time. And that's why the NFL is going to say either that or we don't have anything to do with what the clinicians and what the testing procedures were. We were outside of it and we were farming that out. That's going to be the arguments against this, is it not?
Well, I don't think they were outside of it. I wasn't involved with the settlement. I wasn't involved as a neurology expert at the time, but the NFL was, to my understanding, intimately involved. I mean, they were the parties, they were the other party to the settlement. And so they have medical experts, they have chief medical officers, they have a lot at their disposal. So I'm not sure that the NFL can, pick their hands aside and say that they didn't know what was going on.
Well, this is coming from an NFL spokesperson. The NFL parties play no role in the independent clinicians' examinations, and any resulting diagnoses are reviewed by a neutral court-appointed claims administrator. Challenges to diagnoses are reviewed by neutral court-appointed special masters and ultimately the court itself. Isn't that what that spokesman is trying to argue?
They may be trying to argue it, but that's not the case. So what happens is when you see a player, people with all kinds of neurological problems, but when somebody comes from the NFL, a retired player, what happens is there's the evaluation that I make as a neurologist plus the evaluation that a neuropsychologist To make sure everyone understands, a neuropsychologist is not a neurologist. They are usually a PhD, sometimes a PsyD, but they're a PhD psychologists who then subspecialized in neuropsychology. And so that means they don't prescribe medications, they don't do surgery. What they do is they do basically cognitive testing. So those are those long 6-hour testing you go in for, and they come up and they tell you what parts, are you having problems with the way you're thinking, with your memory, with your speech, with your language, what exactly is going on. And so when we, as the independent people, make our determinations, neurologist saying something and you have a neuropsychologist saying something, we're board certified, we're signing our name at the risk of perjury, we're saying what we believe. Then what happens is the claims admin, they have a committee that looks at this and says, oh, wait a second, there's this little T that you didn't cross. There's this little I that the person didn't meet. There's this. They will pick apart and find reasons to not pay out. But that committee is basing its decisions on the agreement made in the settlement. And the agreement made in the settlement, they're saying, well, it shouldn't have forced racial norms. Well, if it didn't, then why is this committee saying that the NFL is telling them to do it? So they can't have it both ways. They can't say we have nothing to do with it and we have everything to do with it.
What is the
question? If they want to have nothing to do with it, we invite them to have a truly independent and allow physicians and neuropsychologists to make this determination, not some committee set up where you have payouts where lawyers are making lots of money.
What is the question I should be asking you that I'm not asking you?
The question that can come up is to say, well, isn't it fair to rate people based on their race? We rate people, we say that a 30-year-old might be different than a 50-year-old, might be different than a 60-year-old. So is someone who's white going to be someone different than someone who's black? And the answer to that is race is a small part of it. Race is probably a marker for other things. I would submit to you that an NFL player who's white has more in common with an NFL player who's black than that white player has with me just because of the color of my skin. And so basing it on the race alone is unfair. It's racist. It's like we're living in this time now, in this moment of history where we're talking about racism and people are finding ways to find systemic racism where it doesn't exist. Here we have a clear example of racism, and we should be calling them out on it.
Doc, here's the pressing question. Your information has been great, but the most important question is, what's the single most important thing the Bucs have to do to beat the Chiefs?
You're doing it wrong.
Chiefs. Doc?
It's a fair question.
I know it is.
I don't actually. I watch sports, but I do not get into. It's like partisan politics, right? I don't get into.
You don't have an opinion, all right? You don't want to have any. All right, you don't want to have any controversial opinions around here. We understand, Doc. Thank you for being on with us. God forbid you should have a controversial opinion of the single most important thing that the Bucs have to do to beat the Chiefs. Thank you for. You're so bad at it. I don't understand. Thank you for.
Chiefs is a tough one.
Thank you for the information, Doctor. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
The 55th big game is this weekend, 55. A game this big deserves a big prize, not just some trophy. To finish off the football season, DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook app, is giving all players a no-brainer of an offer. To celebrate football's finale, DraftKings Sportsbook is doubling your money if a touchdown is scored in the big game. That's right, all it takes is for one touchdown to be scored Sunday night, and boom, your money is doubled. Sounds like a no-brainer. As if this game wasn't enough reason to party, with double the cash, you'll be celebrating until next season. Don't forget about DraftKings Big Game Prediction Challenge with up to $55 million in total prizes up for grabs and instant prizes for everyone who enters the contest. DraftKings has paid out over $7 billion to its players since 2012, so they know a thing or two about big paydays. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code Dan to get a shot at doubling your money if a touchdown is scored in Sunday's game. That's promo code Dan to get a shot at doubling your money during Sunday night's season finale only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older, New Jersey, Indiana, or Colorado only. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/prediction-challenge-DFS for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or in Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT, or in Colorado, 1-800-522-4700.
One of the recurring tensions that we have around the show here is that Stugotz doesn't want to do what we were just doing right now. I feel like him and Billy both checked out on that interview, didn't understand why we weren't doing jazz hands, why we weren't running around here marching band, why we weren't celebrating Super Bowl week and breaking down the matchups between the Bucs and the Chiefs.
No. It wasn't checked out. It's that I got lost. Like if I'm driving somewhere and I don't show up there because I got lost in the woods, I didn't check out on getting there. I just, I couldn't figure out the direction. So we were going, and then when we were by like the fourth neuropsychologist, neuro this, neuro that,
he really gave his bona fides right off the top, man. He wasn't messing around.
Awesome. No, he had to establish his credibility. It was a good job by him, and then he's smarter than all of us, which goes without saying.
What does that mean?
I don't know.
I mean, okay, congratulations, Doc. You're smarter than all of us.
But Billy and we didn't check out. Billy's right. We were lost, and when you're lost, you desperately try to find your way back to where it is that you were, and we just couldn't find our way back.
It was a maze.
That's all. Yeah.
It was a maze. We were trying to backtrack to where we were before, and then everybody was gone. We were somewhere else. We're just trying to go down the maze, figure it out.
So it's not that you were bored. It's not that you thought it was an awkward guest. It's not that you wanted hijinks and radio panache. It was basically just that. That's what you're saying. Did I say panache wrong again? Panache? What's it called?
I've always
said panache because I didn't know. I said that one time on Pardon the Interruption like 20 years ago, and they still mocked me about it.
Panache?
Yes, because I thought it was a French word, and I have the habit of making everything a little Spanish.
It's panache, is it not?
I've always heard panache.
All right.
Panache. Sounds delicious.
Panache.
Mike, do you have any thoughts on this concussion story? Because this is not the way to cover Super Bowl week. We have not done Super Bowl-related things. We have not had a lot of fun with the Super Bowl. We feel very far outside of the Super Bowl. It's a weird Super Bowl anyway because everyone's doing it by Zoom.
I do. I have thoughts on it, and it's super complicated, and you have to navigate it carefully because of the subject matter. I am fascinated. And the racial layers to this go beyond just what they did in the NFL. What kind of treatment for their trauma did they receive in high school? Is that broken down by race? Because I'm with you. I heard like Najeh Davenport in college had some behavior that made you go, huh? And then years later when you find out about concussions, you're like, well, that makes a little bit more sense. He was a very physical running back, did a lot of blocking for the University of Miami. When he was called into action at running back, he was good at that. He had a decent career in the NFL.
Mike, I only think of, you really talked around that one well, because when I think of the name Najeh Davenport, and in Pittsburgh, he was known as the dump truck. But when I do word association on Najeh Davenport, and this isn't fair to Najeh, but it's what I do, it's pooped in a closet.
Yeah, pooped in a closet.
It's pooped in a closet is what I remember.
And I remember having a lot of fun with that story 12 years ago or so. And now, especially in light of this lawsuit.
He was a battering ram.
Yeah, in light of this lawsuit, that was my first thought when I saw Najeh's. I mean, it's always my first thought whenever I see Najeh's name. It's like you, for me, it's word association, but now I'm looking at it in a different light.
I was just sent a picture of the saddest Radio Row I've ever seen in my entire life.
Mike, Stugotz is not listening to the show today.
I got lost again. I got lost again. I was trying to find my way back, and what I found was a picture of Radio Row.
I'm surprised you didn't do that as a pirate. Mike Ryan is offering you. Do you not hear the tone as he discusses serious, somber subject matter as he reflects on whether 12 years ago it was wrong to laugh at the idea you're gonna be able to say it of taking a poop in a closet. Like I feel like I'm gonna laugh for the rest of my life, no matter what the circumstances are, even if it's the good friend of John Kidna, Tom Hanks, taking a dump in a closet because he's
John Kidna would never.
He eats babies as part of QAnon.
Stugotz, I actually had a conversation with someone yesterday about Radio Row, and I'm like, what's the point of even being there? They're not bringing anyone there. You're sitting on a table just doing Zooms. Why even go through all of this and risk any of the dangers of it?
I can't believe what I'm saying. There is one show at Radio Row. There are tables set up. There are chairs around, but only one show showed up to Radio Row. It's incredible.
All right, Stugotz has placed in the chat what he believes to be the All right, so this is Radio Row. It is okay. I am now seeing it. I want you to imagine. I am seeing this photo, and this is the photo. Okay, I want you to imagine a totally hollowed out BJ's Warehouse or Costco. Totally hollowed out. Okay, there's nothing there. There are no shelves. There's no food. And about, let's say, 20 tables you would find in a banquet hall. 20 tables, all of them separated by about a football field. So do I have this about right? Are there any more descriptions? Chris Cody is writing in the chat that there's a lot of room for activities. There's a lot of room for people. What there aren't is people. They're not bringing anyone through there. It's just the saddest thing I've ever seen. I think Kevin Rogers is there.
I want these guys on our show. I do. I want to get them on.
Oh, yes, we got to do that.
We got to get them on just to paint the picture.
All right,
who are they?
All right, who are these guys? It is a lot of white people. Wait a minute, is that the back of J.J. Watt? Who is that the back of? There is the back of somebody that is larger than all the other backs there, Stugotz. It's a lot of white people being interviewed or sitting at a table talking to a person with an expansive back.
I don't know whose back that is. It could be J.J. If I had to guess, it's a good guess by you, J.J.
Not
Watt.
terrible. Not a terrible guess, just based off looking this guy from behind.
But J.J. Watt just sent out a tweet of him and his dogs playing in the snow, so I don't think he'd be J.J. in Tampa. It's not snowing in Tampa.
All right, so this is as close as we get to Super Bowl week right here. A Costco warehouse shelled out and left with only 20 tables and perhaps the back of J.J. Watt.
So sad. Last year, that hollowed out Costco was a Tootsie's.
Miami was so good. This banquet hall, it feels a little convention center-y, but on top of everything else, you know what this feels, guys? And I'm going to have the word for you, and you guys are all going to recognize it as soon as I say it. What it feels more than anything is Tampa. It feels like Tampa, a little bit damp, moist, maybe smells like the bad parts of the beach. Over 40 years of Tampa. Your grandparents and what they did in Tampa when they were younger, the dirty things they did in Tampa when it was a vacation town. That carpet is from the 80s, right? This is what's happening here. This is an amphitheater of sadness. And it's just one table filled with people.
We should have went this year.
And we should have gone. And because each of the tables is 100 yards apart. And I've got to be honest, I missed the Super Bowl. I can't deny it. Do you realize what a lame Super Bowl week this was? You cannot dispute that over 10 years, some of our best work was made just making fun of what this week is. But now we've been excluded from it entirely, and we were just talking to a doctor from Coconut Creek. That's not near the Super Bowl. Now, I don't want to be particularly close to the old carpets in Tampa.
Although geographically, he's pretty close to the Super Bowl. I mean, the dock in Coconut Creek, is he not?
Is it too late to go? Billy, can we go?
Yeah, I want to go. I would dominate that room.
There's no one in that room. You're not going to talk to anyone.
What do you mean you would dominate that room?
I don't know.
There's no one in the room, of course. What are those banners hanging from the ceiling? What is that? Are those decorations for the media, the assembled media that's not there?
That's one per Super Bowl, yeah. It's tradition, Dan, Radio Row.
Yeah.
I'm trying to track down someone that's there.
Sanners.
That has to be WDAE, right? It has to be the Tampa local station. Like, there's no one that's approving any of their hosts flying to Tampa to host from Radio Row, right? Like, no one.
I don't understand how it is that we're doing this Super Bowl. We're doing the Super Bowl media. What you guys help me, because I didn't watch any of what Media Day was on SportsCenter, but it's usually, some guy dressed as a bumblebee is making his way through the crowd and somebody's asking the dumb question, and then there's this kid This, 8-year-old kid who's a whiz kid broadcaster doomed to a future of a bad life because he was famous at 8, who asking cute questions. Oh, no, wait a minute. That actually happened. That guy's got a more successful interview show than I have. What is that name? His name is Graham. Is it Bissinger? What's that kid's name?
Oh, God. Now you're calling me out.
I'm sorry. I thought for sure somebody. Bensinger?
Yeah, Bensinger. Graham Bensinger.
That kid was a child prodigy at one of these things. What was not Radio Row, what was Media Day like this year, Stugotz? Did you follow any of what was happening on SportsCenter?
No.
On whatever the Tuesday day is when everyone gets together and just sort of sniffs around Tom Brady and asks him his favorite kind of cheesecake?
I didn't check it out this year. It's just it's a weird detachment we have. I think all of us have from this Super Bowl, except for this one show in Tampa. I mean, they are there covering this thing. I think I know who it is, Dan.
We can't have, I don't care whether you know who it is or not. Just get them on the show or don't get them on the show. You're just going to keep saying, I think I know who it is?
I found someone that's there. I'm going to reach out.
Oh, really? You found it. The Pat and Aaron show, I believe it is. I believe it's Aaron. I think it's Aaron Taylor, perhaps, is part of that show.
Lincoln Kennedy, what's up, man?
I was going to ask you for the whole thing.
Dude, I was looking for the whole thing, and now all I have is Club. I think I lost maybe a couple of older files here. I can't find the original one, but I have little bite-sized pieces.
All right, so once upon a time, was this the first Super Bowl that we did in Miami in 2011?
This was the Detroit Super Bowl. K-Raj was in Detroit.
Yeah. Are you sure this wasn't Jacksonville?
This was Detroit. The first one you guys did was Jacksonville. I believe this one came after that. This was the Steelers Seahawks.
All right, for those of you who do not know, Kevin Rogers was an up-and-coming prodigy talent out of Kansas City. He was going to be Nick Wright before Nick Wright. Nick Wright, you'll hear him on South Beach Sessions like you've never heard him before. K-Raj was up-and-coming. He was an up-and-coming 90-year-old man. He's the oldest person to ever be young. It's hard to explain just how old Kevin Rogers was at 21 years old. But he was a titan in this industry, and in this industry, he sat on Radio Row, and it was a nighttime show in Kansas City. I believe he wasn't yet with us in Miami.
This was on 790 The Ticket.
Okay, it was on 790 The Ticket. Okay, forgive me. Regardless, I didn't know whether...
He was already here. It was in Detroit. K-Raj was working for us. He had moved from Kansas City to South Florida.
A lot of cities, a lot of places, a lot of times.
K-Raj first met us at the Jacksonville Super Bowl. The first one we went to, he followed me around until I gave him a job.
He was in Kansas City back then. Yes.
You ran right to the baseline and trapped yourself.
Yes,
there
I really did. I really did.
Timeline business.
Yes.
Why couldn't you just say, man, this was long ago and
I was filibustering for you to find all the K-Raj sound.
I took the 20 minutes necessary. I have quick ones.
Oh, my God. Ray Lewis is here. Can we get Ray Lewis on the show before my tongue falls off? Hey, Ray, you got a couple minutes? Ray, let's see. Whatever. Oh, my God. Ray Lewis is here. Can we get Ray Lewis on the show before my tongue falls off?
Never gets old.
It was just him. I want you to picture the amphitheater we're talking about right now. Because once you got to nighttime on Radio Row, it was basically just K-Raj and, Nasty Nestor from Baltimore. It's just a couple of sad people who get perked up and excited when anyone famous walks into the room.
But Ray Lewis walking in after hours.
No, but the part that I want the audience to sort of enjoy is that K-Raj, this was very much a solo show, and K-Raj was just sort of talking to himself, bored, whether there was a microphone or not there. He was just talking the way that somebody sitting in an amphitheater, empty and sad, would talk if Lincoln Kennedy walked by.
Lincoln Kennedy, what's up, man?
Wish I had the rest of that because he's like, you going to FHM tonight?
Where you going tonight?
You're going to the FHM party tonight.
FHM. I'll see you later.
It's exactly how it happened. I will see you later, said K-Raj. Now, this is what I would like for you to do, okay, as a Google search. This is what I want you to do. I want you right now, I want to slow this down, and I want the audience to enjoy this. I want you to Google image search Lincoln Kennedy. And then I want you to Google image search Kevin Rogers.
It's a pretty common name.
And I want you, Kevin Rogers, 790 The Ticket, and I want you to imagine them walking into an FHM party together. I want you to imagine K-Raj catching up later with Lincoln Kennedy and his crew at the FHM.
Oh, guys, I found it. I found it.
See you there.
Here we go.
I found a file called Best of K-Rod.
Yes.
Wait a
within
second.
that.
Yes.
You have the full clip here?
You got the full clip. Empty the full clip on him.
Let's hear that.
Lincoln Kennedy, what's up, man? Yeah, I'm working. Where you go? You on the FHM party tonight? You going to FHM tonight? All right. I'll see you later.
No.
Everyone's left. Go home.
I want you to hear Lincoln Kennedy shout at a sad, lonely Kevin Rogers in an echoing amphitheater, "Go home, there's no one left here."
Lincoln Kennedy, what's up, man? Yeah, I'm working. Where you go? You on the FHM party tonight? You going to FHM tonight? All right. I'll see you later.
This is the Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugotz podcast.
All right, so Billy Billy was very excited, whispering to us, "Oh, I got somebody. I got someone on Radio Row. We got somebody. We got our guest booker extraordinaire, Billy Gill. Track someone down."
It appears to be the only person on radio.
Well,
Row.
this is
Yes.
part of the problem, yes. His name is Jaroy May. We were talking about the empty, sad amphitheater that he is sitting in. I think I described the picture well, but Jaron, thank you for joining us, and we'll see if we take a tour with you because we're outsiders now. The Syracuse student station evidently is more welcome at the Super Bowl than what used to be a pretty important radio show that is now on the outside, knocking on the glass door saying, "Please let us in, Jaron. Please let us in."
I think we're all welcome. Jaron's the only one that went. I think that's the problem.
All right, so he's there in the sad amphitheater. Go ahead, Jaron, and explain. Is this the height of your dreams, or is this, wait a minute, I thought this was going to be a big deal. I'm covering the Super Bowl. I'm in college. This should be the height of the profession. Why am I profoundly sad? What have I done with my life?
Well, that's a good point. Well, here's the thing. I'm sitting in an empty room. We have these plexiglass kind of 4-table setup, spread out probably 20 feet between every single 4-table setup. And there's probably about, I would say, 40 of these setups, and not even half of them are actually have people sitting at them. So you can be at your station, which my station is right over there. My guys are actually live on the radio right now at WJPZ up in Syracuse. And I just walked over to another station because no one is here. So super quiet, not what I was expecting. However, like you said, I'm a student. I'm going to take any opportunity that I have. Syracuse University was very nice enough to be able to give this opportunity to 5 students, including myself. Newhouse Sports really helped us with everything. So, I mean, you don't say no to that. If they're going to send you down there, any experience is better than no experience. And as a junior, hopefully I'll be able to go back next year, which would be in SoFi out in California, and get a real experience.
Well, that is well said, but when you say any experience is better than no experience, I'm feeling like what you're having out there right now is no experience. Is there anybody who's being brought to you, or are you just sitting at a table? Are you being brought any guests? Or are you guys just sitting at what feels like a banquet room table and just doing radio, saying, "We're here at Radio Row and no one else is here at Radio Row, and 20 tables from here, someone can hear my echo on Radio Row"?
Yeah, so we had one live guest yesterday, none on Monday. We have 2 for today. John Ledyard of the Pewter Report, Bucks beat writer, joined us just now.
You could have stayed in Syracuse and gotten him, I swear.
Chris, it is not cool to laugh at his guest list. When he was just saying, "Hey, we got a guest today. We got a guest," and you Chris, you laughed at his face.
It's a who's who. It's a who's who that guest.
Well, who else did you get?
Okay, who was the second guy you got?
I got a couple others. Randy Grimes, former Bucks player.
Of course,
yeah. There you
the
go.
Grimer.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah. Appreciate it. Chris is now fallen off of his chair.
It's so wrong, Jaron. You're out here hustling. You're trying to do your job. All Chris did was he was bored.
That's right.
You've done actual work at this. Don't let him make fun of you falling out of the screen because he doesn't like that your lead guest was some Bucks writer.
And
That's
Grimes.
true. No, I mean, fair enough. And then the big thing for us is we tried to get, and Syracuse was super helpful, and the alumni with Syracuse are fantastic. But we did a lot of interviews via Zoom that, to your point, could have been done at Syracuse. They were not needed to be done here. So we talked to John Jastremski.
Mello?
We did not get Mello. We're working on Arthur Jones, maybe Chandler Jones as well, a couple of former players. And then Andrew Siciliano, Adam Shine, Damon Amendolara. So we are getting some good guests, but it's all via Zoom that we don't need to be here.
Jared, do not let them bring you down. What you're doing is great, and while you think you may not need to be there, Whittingham pointed out earlier, there's that buzz. It might be just the light bulbs and what it is that causes that buzz, but there's that buzz, and when people hear that buzz behind you while you're interviewing these people, it doesn't matter because everybody knows you're at Radio Row. And where are we? Not at Radio Row.
That's right.
So right there, you're already a leg up on us.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's nothing normal. It's not the true NFL Super Bowl experience, but again, I'm going to take anything if I can.
Is there food? Is there is anyone bringing?
Set us up?
Do they have
we got
spread?
a slider that was smaller than my palm.
You are good. You are learning, young fella, what it is to be in the media. Immediately start complaining about the free food. They are teaching them correctly at Syracuse. Thank you for being on with us, Jared. We appreciate you being a good sport about the nonsense there. I'm sorry your first experience with the Super Bowl is such a sad one.
If anyone walks through that's famous, you want to book him for this show, feel free, okay?
I got Billy's number now. I'll give him a call.
Jaron, the things behind you right now in that sad amphitheater, how many hundreds of yards or miles away from you is the closest thing that you're talking? I can't see anything except the wall many yards behind you.
Yeah,
you're going to spin us around?
Let me give you a full 360.
All right,
okay. That's the full.
Oh my God, is that sad?
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's pretty empty.
He could shout right now and nobody would hear him.
No one. There's a radio guy right there. I would not get on their airwaves.
Do it. Shout.
Just shout.
Can you shout? Can you shout the Dan Le Batard show with Stugotz totally rules? Rules Radio Row or something cooler than that.
Just scream. I didn't ask for any of this.
Yes, I didn't
Scream
ask
out Lincoln Kennedy.
That's
just
much
pretend
better.
your internet crashed.
My goodness. No, I mean, yeah, it is empty. Today specifically, I think maybe 15 radio stations are here. So.
All right, Jaron, thank you for making us feel a small part of your sadness, making us a little happier because we've been totally excluded from your non-experience that you're gathering there in college of not interviewing people.
Yeah, no, I mean, thank you for having me on. Hopefully next year is better, though.
What do we have to tell people about where it is that you work so that they can find you for being a good sport? What is it that you need to promote here?
So WJPZ, Z89 at Syracuse University, Citrus TV as well. We're creating content. And, of course, Newhouse Sports, the entire department at Newhouse and Syracuse University, greatly helped us to be able to get here, and we appreciate all of their help. And if you want to go give me a follow, Jaron_May on Twitter.
There, nice.
Oh, boy.
There we go.
You going to FHM tonight?
The 55th big game is this weekend. 55. A game this big deserves a big prize, not just some trophy. To finish off the football season, DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook app, is giving all players a no-brainer of an offer. To celebrate football's finale, DraftKings Sportsbook is doubling your money if a touchdown is scored in the big game. That's right. All it takes is for one touchdown to be scored Sunday night, and boom, your money is doubled. Sounds like a no-brainer. As if this game wasn't enough reason to party, with double the cash, you'll be celebrating until next season. Don't forget about DraftKings Big Game Prediction Challenge with up to $55 million in total prizes up for grabs and instant prizes for everyone who enters the contest. DraftKings has paid out over $7 billion to its players since 2012, so they know a thing or two about big paydays. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code Dan to get a shot at doubling your money if a touchdown is scored in Sunday's game. That's promo code Dan to get a shot at doubling your money during Sunday night's season finale only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older. New Jersey, Indiana, or Colorado only. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/prediction-challenge-DFS for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER, or in Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT, or in Colorado, 1-800-522-4700.
Billy, do you feel like it's more like Super Bowl week now? I heard you lamenting earlier that it doesn't feel anything like Super Bowl week. You also had a great question, Billy. It was a question I thought nobody was asking. I believe that the entire media is gathered in Tampa for the first time that the Tampa Bay Bucks are a team that is playing in a Super Bowl in their home city. It has never happened before. And Billy had a question about the hotel rooms that I don't believe anyone else was asking.
Ah, yes. What happens to all the hotel rooms the Bucks were supposed to use? Because I'm a little bit worried about the hotel staff who are probably missing out on a ton of tips, right? Do they get a refund? Who books those? Is it the league? Who handles that, right? Because each team is not booking hotels in Tampa saying, hey, we're going to make it to the Super Bowl. So it's the league, right? Is there a cancellation policy?
There's a lot of questions
They
here.
get a refund? I mean, the real question is what happens to those hotel rooms?
Right, the rare Super Bowl where one of the teams doesn't need a hotel. I mean,
the only time it's ever happened. And Billy brought up a good point, I thought, except that during a pandemic, I don't even know how coveted a ticket this is. How many people are allowed? It's Florida. I don't know any of the details about what it is that I'm asking. I'm asking more questions than Billy here.
I think I saw that there's 20,000 fans and 30,000 cutouts.
I thought the NFL was giving tickets away to nurses, doctors, people who've been dealing with this pandemic. I thought those were the only fans allowed in the building for the game, which is a very nice thing by the NFL.
There are tickets available to the general public on StubHub right now. The get-in-the-door price is $4,762 to get into the Super Bowl.
Wow. Okay,
That's down. I heard 12,000 last week.
Billy made an excellent point in that last
Thanks,
segment.
guys. This is a great segment for me.
Billy made an excellent point.
Good points.
That you can
Good
hear
guess.
Radio Row. That the listener in their car listening to their favorite sports talk AM radio station locally is familiar with the hum. He doesn't even need to hear a promo or the guys talking about the game to know that they're at Radio Row. And that hum is certainly what this show is missing this week. So, ladies and gentlemen, I provide you the hum.
Okay.
Proceed. Now it's Radio Row.
All right. Well, Billy, you did make a good point, though, when you said, I don't know if the buzz around Radio Row is buzz or if it's simply because one of the light bulbs in a cavernous room that feels like something out of The Shining, one of the light bulbs is beginning to flicker and hum, because that is what it felt like. The whole thing felt profoundly sad. That kid was a good sport about it, but that sound... Can you imagine you've tried to arrive at the point in your life where you're covering the Super Bowl, paid for by someone else? That's dream comes true stuff, Stugotz. That's when you were a young broadcaster coming up. Somebody's going to pay for you to go to the Super Bowl.
Yep, you're in college, Syracuse, new house. I mean, everything's looking great.
And now look at you. This is hurting my ears. Is anyone else feeling like their face hurts because of this sound? This is not the hum. This sounds...
Feels like home.
This is not what Radio Row's hum feels like. I feel like you're grabbing me by the throat and shaking me with a single hand.
I mean, it's usually a little bit more subtle than this, but I'm amplifying so you know that the hum will always be there for you, Dan.
It feels like it's going to pull me away.
It's one of those things that results in you pooping yourself because it hits a note that you don't know about, Dan.
The poop note.
Yeah.
I think Stugotz is right. It's the feeling of being pulled away. It feels like a magnetic force is pulling us away from doing radio well. I can almost see it from here, but I'm being dragged in the other direction, far away from where radio is done well. Does this hurt anyone else's
I feel like
neck?
my brain's getting cancer with this sound.
What are you going for there, Mike? Were you going?
Radio
I don't
Row,
feel
I
like
mean.
Radio Row is undulating sadness. Never more so than this year. How is it possible that Radio Row, bustling epicenter of ass crack, I've told you before, it's one of the saddest places per square foot I've ever been in my life with activity. How is it possible that we just checked in on a Radio Row sadder than the one that made me basically protest every year that we had to be anywhere around it? We've gone to how many? 3 of these? We went to Detroit, Jacksonville to play the corporate game, and to do the thing where you talk up the big game. We went to 3 of these total, one of them in Miami.
We didn't go to Detroit.
Yeah,
I mean, our show.
I was a listener. You refused to go to Detroit.
He said he wouldn't go to Detroit if we paid him $1 billion.
Yeah. So you didn't go to Detroit. You did go to Jacksonville. Good on you. You took Detroit off. I believe the next one in the cycle might have been Miami, and you actually went to that Radio Row. That was my first and only Radio Row. So I can back you up when you say the world's epicenter of ass crack, because my first experience with it was just looking directly into the late Ralphie May's asshole for about 12 straight hours as he sat in for an entire block of sports talk radio with a Baltimore affiliate.
Hold on. I need to hear more about this. I
need to hear more about the late Ralphie May's asshole.
That is Radio Row.
Yes.
I mean,
it is Radio Row in every way, but was it his whole ass or was it just his asshole?
His ass crack seemed to extend forever.
Okay, but that was true whether or not he was bent over, right?
He wasn't bent over. That was the most fascinating part about it. It was almost as if his ass crack began at his shoulder blades. Rest in peace.
Wait a minute. Yeah, it's too soon. It's too soon.
Rest in power.
That sentence.
No, not all of that. You can't. So you're saying it's almost as if, put it on the poll, Guillermo, at Le Batard Show. Was it almost as if Ralphie May's ass crack started at his shoulder blades?
You shouldn't put that on the poll.
Why not? Because he's dead?
Yeah, because he's dead.
Now decorum is what you're shooting
rest
for.
In power. What more do you want?
All right,
God rest his soul.
All right, then put rest in power on the Twitter poll. See if it makes it any better. And you're only protecting him now because he's dead. You didn't mind making fun of the fat man when he was alive, but all of a sudden he dies, and now he can't have an ass crack that starts at his shoulder blade.
Whose ass crack were you thinking about? Because I thought we were thinking of the same asshole.
I never saw Ralphie May's asshole.
Really? You couldn't miss it.
You missed out.
It was easier to find than the NFL Network set.
I find it hard to believe that his asshole was easy to find. I'm just going to argue on behalf of the merits of it being well hidden.
No, but I mean there was a straight line to it. You could piece it together.
Anyone want to help me here? Oh, come on.
That's Radio Row.
That's what it sounds like at the center of Ralphie May's asshole.
You hate this. I love it. Stugotz loves it.
I love
Where all
it.
the movers and shakers are.
Oh,
where you want to
God, I miss it so badly. We had so much fun last year.
The hum of Radio Row is the static of an ISDN line as two people have a conversation 20 feet away from a microphone.
Yeah, lots of chatter in the background.
Ooh, I think I can find us some ambient chatter. Hang on. Let's see if that hits the note. But in the meantime,
I think I'm with Chris
He's
Cody.
really capturing it.
Chris Cody, I believe that we have arrived in a place where Chris Cody is absolutely right when he applies his cynicism to major greed, major commerce, the idea that the Super Bowl is weird this year, they're not going to be able to profit. All of this is going to be a little bit odd, having this spectacle of the Super Bowl. I don't know how the NFL is going to make it feel as big as it always does. They do big. They do big better than anybody does, but this is going to feel weird and hollowed out. That feels more like Radio Row.
Thank you, Mike.
That feels a little bit more like Radio
I'm thinking Brady and Mahomes just being there kind of takes care of that.
Well, this is the thing that Chris was saying, though. You say that, and Chris says that the NFL is not even going to test Brady and Mahomes this week for COVID, and if by some chance they do get COVID, they're going to lie about it. They're going to deny it. They're going to just make sure that there is not a circumstance. It can't be Brady against Henny, man. It can't. It just can't be. I can't even. The Super Bowl cannot be Brady against Henny. They will absolutely do anything to get those two guys out there.
It's a great take by Chris. I can't even name Brady's backup. I don't even know.
Put it on the poll, Guillermo. Put it on the poll, Guillermo.
Not terrible.
At Le Batard Show, can you name Tampa Bay's backup quarterback?
Gabbert and Henny.
That's right. Chris, you're so right about that. There's simply no way those guys can test positive. Neither one of them. You ruined the sport.
They're all supposed to get emails on when they're to get tested, and Mahomes and Brady just didn't get their emails. I don't know what happened.
I think they're going to test Gabbert and Henny and have them become positive on purpose so Brady and Mahomes never come out. How about that for a Super Bowl take?
This right here is in the movie, the guy who falls to his knee because the alien is making some sort of sound that makes him put his hand to the side of his face because his face is spasming and it hurts, and this sound hurts. It hurts.
Stugotz, here in every relationship, there's a short list of forgivable offenses, but missing the most romantic day of the year isn't one of them. Valentine's is here, so don't wait. Head to 1-800-Flowers.com today. Right now, 1-800-Flowers has a last-minute offer for listeners of this show. Get 24 multicolored roses for just $34.99, or upgrade to 24 red roses for $10 more. It's an unbelievable offer from 1-800-Flowers, 24 multicolored roses for just $34.99, or upgrade to 24 red roses for just $10 more. Whether it's a full spectrum of multicolored roses or timeless red roses, you can't go wrong with a bouquet from 1-800-Flowers. All roses from 1-800-Flowers are picked at their peak, cared for every step of the way, and shipped fresh to ensure lasting beauty. Order now and get 24 multicolored roses for $34.99, or upgrade to 24 red roses for just $10 more. Bouquets are selling fast, so you have to take care of this today. Do it right now. To order 24 multicolored roses for $34.99, or upgrade to 24 red roses for just $10 more, it's simple. Go to 1-800-Flowers.com, click on the radio icon, and enter code DANPOD. That's 1-800-Flowers.com, code DANPOD, D-A-N-P-O-D. Hurry, the offer expires Wednesday.
So for one rollicking day last week, this show suddenly became inexplicably, after 20 years of not doing it, a business show. And we became promptly good friends with Joe Weisenthal. He's the co-host of the Odd Lots podcast, What'd You Miss, on Bloomberg TV. And he is here to teach us business things. We are not a business-savvy show, even though some of us around here pretend to be. One of us in particular has been very strong over the course of the last week, arguing on behalf of AMC and GameStop.
Hey, green on the day, boys. Green on the day. The squeeze is coming. Trust me. The squeeze is coming.
It's back.
So here is Joe.
So far, the only thing being squeezed are my balls, Joe.
Oh, my God.
Where were you last week? I've lost my ass.
You know, I was thinking back to what I said, and I think it holds up pretty well. I said I can't fault anyone for wanting to play the game, but probably not wise to put life-changing amounts of money in. And now that it's crashed, I think I said the responsible thing. So I don't feel any shame a week later about how this all turned out.
What am I supposed to do with 1,200 shares of Nokia? Tell me what. There's an earnings report I heard. What are they earning?
It's funny how much a difference a week makes, because then suddenly everyone remembers, here's an old cell phone flip company, here's a movie theater chain where most of no one's going to movies, and here's literally a store that sells physical video games. That wasn't quite the vibe last week, was it?
Did you end up finding any of the details on that Blockbuster stock that was still around? Like, did anyone give you?
I tried. So, as I mentioned, there is this weird ticker that's out there that does seem to represent the whatever weird holding company is still liquidating Blockbuster assets. I tried. But by trying, I mean I spent about 3 minutes Googling, and I couldn't find anything. Every time I put in the ticker, various names of it, all I found was references to the ticker itself. I don't know if there's some company out there that still exists, someone maybe in Delaware or the Cayman Islands technically having the right to Blockbuster's liquidation. I could find nothing. Maybe I'll try again. I'll report back if I ever discover anything.
Joe, it seems like a month ago, Robinhood had a squeaky clean reputation. Robinhood, excuse me. And here we are just, a couple of weeks later, and they don't. So what's going to happen here with Robinhood, with their CEO? How much trouble are they in?
I mean, I don't think they're in, trouble per se. There's going to be hearings in D.C., and those hearings aren't going to go anywhere. I don't think there's really going to be any legislation. I don't know. The reputation hit isn't great, but I do think we're sort of at this moment where Robinhood and Silicon Valley and all these sort of West Coast mindset, we're going to disrupt everything, democratize finance, whatever this means. There are rules when you're holding people's money, people who have money in an app or in a they sort of have some expectations about the safety of the company. And I don't think Silicon Valley is used to that idea. You know, they're used to just like apps that share and there's like no real responsibility. When you're holding people's money, there are rules, and there's no amount of like Silicon Valley gloss or growth hacking that can get around them. And they suddenly realized that there was kind of a limit to what they could offer.
Robinhood is releasing a Super Bowl ad. So in real terms, what kind of damage did they do to their brand?
I mean, I think it's real brand damage, but what else? You know, I think they'll be okay. There's like look, these companies always get into trouble. How many times in the last 10 years did Facebook have some scandal? It's like, everyone's deleting Facebook, hashtag delete Facebook. It never happens. Hashtag delete Uber. It never happened. I think they will be okay, but I do think that, like, you know, it was sort of a wake-up call for them that there are limits, and they put out this thing kind of blaming the architecture of how trading works. We can get into it or not, but in the end, like, they didn't have enough capital on hand to meet the rules, and the system worked because they didn't collapse. And it's a lot better for all their clients that they didn't, and that these curbs actually went into place.
But what do you make of the morality of specifically, first of all, the irony, taking from the rich and giving to the poor? They were doing the opposite by rule in a way that felt unethical, felt immoral, felt actually kind of illegal, but I guess isn't illegal?
No, I don't think it was. Look, I mean, you know, the way to think about it is basically Robin Hood's bankers. It gets more technical, but the way to think about it is like, Robin Hood's bankers were like, your clients are doing some crazy stuff. They're buying GameStop shares at $400 a share. This probably should be a $20 stock. And due to these formulas, like, you need to have more cash, and they didn't have it. So you either get the cash right then, which they had to raise or borrow, or curb trading, and they kind of did some of both. I get why people don't like it. I mean, on the other hand, no one wants to hear it, but probably a lot of people saved a lot of money because the system prevented them from buying GameStop at $400 a share, which was really fun last week. And we were talking about it, and we were having a good time, and it was a really fun story, but then it was not a great investment. And a lot of people were probably saved for making a terrible investment.
I made that one because I invested somewhere else, like an adult, by the way, and Mark Cuban did an AMA, and he said that I should hold because it's not a loss if I don't actually sell. So I'm going to do that, and this should come up, right? GameStop should come up. There was a little bit of a squeeze yesterday, Joe. It shot up to 127. We were like, here we go. Hold diamond hands.
I think it's up a little bit today. I'm just going to say one thing and about that Mark Cuban advice, and Mark Cuban made one of the great sales of all time because he sold broadcast.com to Yahoo in 1999. And as soon as that deal closed, more or less, he went out and bought a hedge so that the price he spent to basically take the risk off the table. At the time, there was like a massive bubble, and probably a lot of people thought everything was going a lot higher. And Mark Cuban in 1999 had the wherewithal to take his chips off the table when everyone else was buying. So I'm just going to say sometimes it pays not to have the diamond hands. Sometimes it pays to sell.
Can you tell us a little more that we don't understand, perhaps, about what just happened yesterday with Amazon and Bezos? What did you think was interesting there, or was there anything to you? Was it as surprising to you as it seemed to be to a lot of people?
Yeah, I certainly did not expect that to happen. I didn't see it coming at all. But, like, Amazon's been around like a quarter of a century now. That is a long time in any job. 25 years or however long it is. It was founded in the mid-90s. It's a long time to be a CEO. I think like with most of these big tech companies, we're so used to associating the CEO with the company. We don't I don't know who the CEO of like, say, Alcoa is, which makes aluminum, or the CEO of like Dow Chemical is, or any other company. With these tech companies, they're so tied with their founder and CEO that we're not used to the idea of like an Amazon where he's not running it. But hey, he kind of still will be because he'll be the executive chairman. And so the new CEO will have him as a boss. I'm sure it's mostly about him getting to focus on the fun stuff and not having to deal with, like, say, getting called up to a hearing at some point in 2021 because people in Congress want to, like, have an antitrust hearing. There's a lot of probably annoying aspects of the CEO job that he has deserved a break from that.
I would assume that a lot of people would jump to the conclusion because he is interchanging that top spot on wealthiest man in the world with Elon Musk that
Yeah.
they would assume, well, what's the scandal? Is it because of the unionizing in his warehouses? Is it because there was the stealing money from drivers that they did over a couple of years? Because of the damage that they're doing to the environment, even as he pours money into trying to save the environment?
I'll say two things. I mean, I'm sure dealing with all of these scandals and investigations is not very fun. So that's one thing. It's interesting you mentioned Musk because they both had their own private space companies on the side. So Musk has SpaceX, Bezos has Blue Origin, and I only sort of realized this because I was reading some of our own coverage today. Bezos started his own private space operation 2 years before Musk did, but it's way behind. Blue Origin is not where SpaceX is in terms of technology, products, profitability. Bezos has been pouring about $1 billion a year of his own money into it. So when you talk about that rivalry with Musk, who's now the richest guy in the world, you got to wonder if part of it is just he wants to spend more time with his rockets.
Is it a real rivalry?
I think it kind of is. I mean, yeah, I think there's a handful of players in this private space race, and SpaceX has done phenomenally well, and I don't think Blue Origin, which should have had the head start, has done as well. And I'm sure, look, these guys are just, insanely hyper competitive. And Amazon won. I mean, it's just, there's never been anything with its dominance that we could think of. It's making insane amounts of cash. Maybe there's a sense in which he wants to win in this other area where his company is a little bit behind.
As a business guy, someone who cares about this stuff, can you tell us what you find most interesting about the Amazon story?
I think it's interesting. The new CEO is obviously coming out of the AWS, which is their cloud computing thing. And what I like, what's so amazing about that whole operation isn't just this idea that, okay, they made it so that anyone can get access to servers and computers and stuff, et cetera, which is now how all businesses operate. But they basically invented this idea of taking one of their own cost areas and turn it into a business. So like servers, computers, computing costs, this was a major source of Amazon's own cost, its own spending was on its own servers. And they're like, well, we're spending all this money. Why don't we just get other people to pay for it as well? And so it is kind of like a business revolution, this idea of finding an area that costs you a lot of money, building it out, and then actually turning it into a profit center. And that thing just throws off an insane amount of cash this year. I think it's going to do just the cloud computing is going to do like 50 billion annual run rate. I mean, it's just unreal. And so not surprising that the guy who's run that business for a long time is the new CEO.
Stugotz is saying, though, and has been saying and taking victory laps for a long time about Elon Musk is a fraud. He's a fraud. All he does, just another rocket blew up yesterday. This happens a lot. Yeah. And now he's a fraud, according to Stugotz.
Make a rocket that works. I mean, get me a car. I order a car, have it delivered to my driveway on time. How about that,
but
Musk?
now he's the richest man in the world, Elon Musk is. So is Stugotz right? Does he get to be right about this?
Well, I would never go on record with calling anyone a fraud for obvious reasons. But I will say, in general, there is probably a thinner line between being an amazing, amazing salesman and a fraud. And you could imagine a scenario. I mean, like a couple of years ago, things were looking pretty rough for them. They were low on cash. There was a report they tried to sell. A lot of people thought they were going bankrupt. Had they gone bankrupt, or had they run out of money, or been forced to sell in some fire sale, then the reputation would have been, Elon, he was a fraud all this time. They pulled through, and now, sales seem to be going pretty well. And so it was like, he's a genius. So I will say, I will say there are probably many stories in American business life in which some small thing going one way or the other way is the determinant of whether someone ends up being characterized as a fraud.
Just like sports. It's just like
it really
sports.
Is.
You were so close to being right.
No, I was right because I'm still waiting for him to deliver on this super tunnel from Orlando to Miami that gets me there in 13 minutes. And that hasn't happened yet.
That's not going to happen.
He's a fraud. That's why.
All right. But he's the richest man in the world. Joe, thank you for being on with us.
You.
We appreciate it. We will just check in with you from time to time to talk about the uber rich. We will do that. Yes, thank you.
Take care.
See you, man.